Hey everybody, this is Chance Fischer, and this room sounds great. I thought my name was Jesus Christ for a long time, because every time they see me, Jesus Christ, this guy's like coming up again. So I don't need you to tell me that it's inclusive, just include me. Oh my God, you beat the odds. And it's just like, no, don't praise me, change the odds.
Hello, everybody out there in podcast land. Thank you for tuning into This Room Sounds Great. I'm Reese Williams. I'm recording from In Your Ears Studios. And I know while you are busy fluffing your pillows and taking out your recycling, you put on your little earbuds and you thought, I'm going to listen to This Room Sounds Great. And we couldn't be more grateful. So thank you so much. This episode, we get the pleasure of speaking with Chance Fischer. He has a couple other pseudonyms too, I think. Some aliases, we'll say. Hello.
Usually people, I thought my name was Jesus Christ for a long time, because every time they see me, Jesus Christ, this guy's like coming up again. So maybe that's not the pseudonym that I want, but yep. Chance Fischer, Mr. Chance Fischer. If you disrespect me, and yeah, everything else is, it's just if you see me out, Chance is perfectly fine.
RESPECT. I will allow you to introduce your music style, how long you've been doing it, how you got started, and then I'll ask a few more poignant questions.
Yeah, so I guess I do traditional rap. I'm somewhere like I'm rooted in the classics, and I like to see where we can like bend the genre and go forward. Being able to incorporate things like really great dirty drums, but being able to like take transformative things like the 808 and being able to like use very melodic synths if we're gonna do that. I love that. I like to say that my style of rap is a little bit more philosophical, but it's like it can be heady, but it's not written in a way that isn't geared toward the audience. So I like to take very complex observations in my life from my perspective and just deliver it to people in a way that's kind of like tongue-in-cheek. So maybe the closest thing, one of my greatest inspirations as a writer is Oscar Wilde. So somewhere in like the satirical like genre of that and like traditional rap. So that's kind of what I do.
I had to write a report on Oscar Wilde in high school, and I remember reading, and this was back in the 80s and 90s when we still weren't saying gay very openly or, that sort of thing. And I remember in my report, I used the adjective flamboyant. And my teacher just said, that was a really great euphemism. That was a really great way to say that.
Very much. And I mean, gay and flamboyant, and that's like super great. Like I love just how open and free like he is, his writing is, how like it's like comical in a way, but not all of it is. Like some of it's like very serious. Like if you read Dorian Gray, like there's nothing really funny about that. But it is great how he can like kind of single the odd man out in a room, and you can see like where even a person that like fits in maybe kind of with society, how he's able to show how they're like ostracized, even if that's like within their own mind. I think that's such a beautiful thing. My favorite, like when I think about like great lyricists, I really think about folks who aren't trying to like use all the crazy words and tell you everything that they know and like talk to you like they're smarter than you. I like really like folks who are so gifted at language that the weight of what they're saying lingers with you, but they're able to make it feel light,
Clear. And just clear.
Yep.
Most of the time, the musicians that we've had on, when I'm really, really touched by their songwriting, is you're exactly right. They didn't pick the craziest word to rhyme with. It fit. It was clear. It was appropriate. It was clever. It was definitely clever. It wasn't like, oh, I bet I know what word they're gonna choose. So it was clever enough, but it didn't have to have 8 syllables and pulled out of a thesaurus.
Like one of the things I think about, and one is I don't perform this song often, but there's a lyric that I wrote, and I think about it often because it kind of resonates with me. But I said, checks stayed the same, but our bills got a raise, right? And it's just like we eat, it's like we're still moving, and the idea of like everybody kind of knows what that feels like, and it didn't need to be crazy metaphor or simile or anything like that. It just needed to be an observation of what it was and using as few words as possible to be potent, you know?
So who did you grow up listening to for inspiration? I mean, I can't imagine. Well, let me say this. Most rap we hear mainstream isn't as thoughtful and clever and creative. Um, that's mainstream. So who were you listening to coming up?
Yeah.
I know those artists are there. You just kind of have to dig for them.
I think it's funny because like I guess maybe the people who most folks would be like aren't like thoughtful and creative. I always think that so like I think a lot of people get like a bad rap because of like the auto tune or pieces of that, and it's just like the same subject matter over and over again. But like there are like people like Young Dro who might be talking about cars, but you know he's just like now and later green or whatever. And I like loved how he was able to use imagery, and it reminded me of like all the old maybe like country uncles in my family, how they'll be like, it's a whole heap of this, or like, you know, like using like these weird idioms that people are like, what does that mean? But you also like know exactly what it means.
100%.
So I think that's cool. I grew up listening to like, honestly, a lot of like flashy Southern rap. I listened to a lot of like Cash Money, No Limit, like early Lil Wayne. It wasn't like really until later that I started listening to like Jay-Z, and Biggie, because that just wasn't like what it was down here, and it felt so far from my perspective, especially like in my youth. Like as I grew older and I started to focus more on like building business, and even when I was just like thinking about hustling when I was younger, I wasn't thinking about it for like where's my longevity. It's just more like, all right, cool, let's like do this thing. So I listened to like a lot of what everybody else listened to. Juvenile, Mystical. The first rap album that I bought was Mystical, Let's Get Ready. But outside of that, like my household, I guess I wasn't really listening to a lot of rap because my parents were like very heavy in the church.
Well, yeah, and I was going to say maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe I am one of those people who, you know, there's this whole misconception about what is being said and how it's being said. There's, you know, sometimes there's a huge difference. Some people may just hear the sound of rap and instantly put the kibosh on it, regardless of what the subject matter is. Some people hear the twang of country and they just think, oof, I am shutting it down. You know, I don't want to hear what they have to say. So, you know, maybe the people you listed that you were listening to, maybe they are clever and maybe they are creative.
And
They just, media-wise and things like that, they just, unfortunately, I hadn't heard rappers talked about being poets until very recently. Maybe that's what I'm getting at.
And I think it has a lot to do with like, who are you as a person, and who are you as an artist, right? Like I feel like a lot of folks who, like if I'm listening to somebody who's just like, I'm hustling, I'm trapping, and it's just like, I know they are because they like they use all that drug money to like get themselves on. They like pay for themselves, and it's just like there's something I might not be looking for. I'm not maybe looking at like something introspective from that, but I can still get motivation from that, and I can still like listen to somebody who said like we didn't have anything and this is what we did. So I think it has to do with like who you want to be. On the other side of it though, I always argue like James Brown, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what was so revolutionary about James Brown was like, and he did it twice, like being able to like put things on the one count and like it made you move, and it was like people were like, this is music, like it didn't make sense, and he was just like, play it the way I say it, and like James Brown wasn't necessarily saying like a whole lot of work. James Brown was really like ad-libbing through like a lot of songs, right? And then the second time when like he made bass the lead and not drums, and he brought Bootsy back in, and then that became like some like new thing. And maybe I think we get so caught up sometimes in like these cerebral pieces of this where it's just like, how does it make you feel? You know, like when I listen, I respect a lot of country because it doesn't have to be like its weight and how impactful it is in its simplicity, right? It's in like, this song is about my dog and this song is about my girl, and like this is like about my heartbreak.
But
and
that's what everybody can relate to.
Yeah, you know. And then the other side of it, like if I hear rappers who like came from similar circumstances of like being like poor and like the world against him, and I seen him have like jewels and cars and things like that. Like there's something to be said for that, right? Like there's a piece of this where I have to be like, man, like this is motivational. And it's like I think that the context and the lens is so judgmental without like taking a moment to like look at the circumstances and the why, right? You know, and sometimes like people get like real like defensive about this, but I'm not. Like I'm really just like, no, I think it just has a lot to do with look at this, and then look at like how impactful like a lot of hip hop has been, and it was like shunned the same way jazz was shunned, and now you can listen to it in the VMFA. Punk was shunned, like all these things when it was like new and revolutionary. It's growing now, and it has like different subgenres, and you can find anything. Like if you want to find something that's like super introspective, there's a piece of that. But the mainstream piece of this is like it's always gonna be like the things that make people feel good. Like the same way Kesha makes people feel good, or Dua Lipa like makes people feel good. And it might not be the most introspective song, but that doesn't stop. Like there has to be something to be said about multiple people want to listen to the same thing, you know? And if we're like sitting over here and kind of like this auteur piece of it where it's like, you don't understand, like it's just kind of like, maybe that's not what that artist wanted to be. For me, I like writing. I respect writing on so many different levels, and words have been able to like literally change my life, you know, like even in writing my college essays, being able to convince people to like take me on or like invest in something that I had. Like words have been like one of my biggest strengths, so I'd be doing myself a disservice to not have that. But the other piece of it is sometimes I just want to write a song about having fun or like looking at the leaves change, and I think that everybody's like, I want this to be real and authentic. And it's just like, look, you are like, what you want is somebody to like take the accountability that you don't want to take for yourself, right? What you want is somebody to like fill the void because you feel like there's nobody that speaks for you or whatever. But that doesn't mean in so many words that like that's the right thing. It's just a different perspective.
There's a time and a place. Look how many artists themselves change genres throughout or stay within the genre but change their personality. I mean, people poo-pooed Madonna for changing her look and her style, and it's just a part of growing up is trying to express yourself.
Exactly.
Right?
Like,
and
people say that you're like, some people say that you're selling out, but like really growing up is this unlearning of everything that we did to like keep us safe, right? Like if you think about your parents, they tell you things not to do or things to avoid because your parents' role is to keep you alive as long as possible, right? So the less things that like are like variables and like making sure that, you know, like you're not extinct before your time, like they're going to do that. Like friends and everybody are going to do that. Like, and that's why usually if you take a risk, people aren't likely to support it. And it's not because they don't support you. It's just they can't understand why you would put yourself in danger. Like that's like a very primal way to think about things, right? Like why would you put yourself in certain danger, right? Or even like the idea of it. So like as you grow, it's like unlearning, unraveling, and like really finding out like who you are, because you might have this set of like standards or like principles that you kind of learned and you shared and you adopted it, and then you get in a situation where you're like, I don't feel the same way about it, and then you move, and then you really sometimes need to, I want the person to fail. I want to know the person that like made the mistakes, because at least I know you're human. Like if you never tried or did anything, I feel like what happens is that person encounters something and then they like go off the rails. So yeah, artists should change, and the more they get exposed to things and like the fluidity of music, I think like folks think that they're trying to go pop, and I'm like, I don't necessarily. There are instances of that, right?
mm-hmm.
But I don't think that everybody wants to do that. And then that comes back to the question of, are artists making art for themselves, or are they making it for
to be the
listener, right? Like, yeah. And it's just like sometimes you are making music for yourself and it might not be understood or whatever. But like as you grow and as you change, like shit's gonna get it's
PG-13.
It's gonna get weird, because it's gonna get messy, because you're gonna get to a place where like you've never been, and as you're growing there, it's gonna be some pains because like you don't know and you're experimenting. And the cool thing about experimenting is like it it doesn't have to be good. Like even with like writing, right? Like writing, if you expect like some of my biggest writer's block came from like wanting to write the masterpiece and like going over and going over. But like writing, when you're writing, is to write and it should be to
It's a
get it out.
practice.
And then editing is editing and editing, and you can't be in two modes. And people want to write and edit their lives at the same time, and it's like you can't like try something new and be good. You know, like maybe you get it right, but if you fail, right?
But that's the thing. I don't even call it failing. You're literally trying something with a thought of outcome, with a goal. I'm trying this because I want it to go this way. And if it doesn't, you've just learned that you've got to try something else to either reach that goal or you just changed the goal. You just realized that goal isn't what you wanted anyway.
It's the scientific method. Like you literally like develop a hypothesis to see if you can prove it. It doesn't mean that like you will, you might find out that you don't, but in that conclusion, you have found other things, reasons as to why, right? And honestly, it's to change your perspective, and see like what works and what doesn't. And like most of this is just like you get an element of a thing that you like and you find something that you do really well, and the rest of it is just like trash. So trim the fat and then like rebuild it. I think, however, sometimes folks prematurely share their experiments. And yeah, that might not have like great reception, or they don't give enough context or lead time to people, right? Like if you're going to do something that like immediately alienates your fan base, like there should be some consideration there, right? Like there's growth. So like what are you doing? How do you like bring them in? Like what are you doing in terms of like, are we doing videos to talk about the transition and growth? Like if you just come out of nowhere with a song that like people are like, what is this? And there's no foundation there and they're just like stuck, they didn't agree to go on the experiment with you.
Well, and you have to remember too, as the artist is evolving, we as the listeners are evolving. Maybe your music just isn't meeting them where they are. There are plenty of artists that I like 6 out of 8 of their albums. And it's just because where I was in my life, that what they were talking about spoke to me, or it, we're both moving targets, So
I think that's absolutely right. Like you grow out of, or you should grow out of some things. And if you become dependent as a fan, and I'm speaking not as like the artist, I'm speaking as a fan of like artists. I'm like, oh, you let me down. And it's just like, how can another person that you've never met, right, like let you down? If anything, if you've been following their career or whatever, and you like saw somebody who was like, let's say you had somebody who was super depressed and then they got to a place where they were happy in their life. Maybe you don't relate to that, but like at least be like, all right, cool, that's great. Maybe you're still unhappy, and then, find something that relates to that. But like, I think we put so much into, and then on the artist side, I think we put so much into like wanting to please so many folks, but just like, and that's inherently dishonest, right? Because if we're like seeking to like please all of these people and we can't find ourselves in the center of that, then like what are you giving people? Like it's not even like a shell of yourself. It's literally make believe. And if your whole career has been that, then great. But
so when you write, are you writing as you're processing, or is it in retrospect? Is it future, some of those hypotheses?
Honestly, it just kind of depends. I'm reflective a lot, and then I read about the future too, but I have written as I process. That I don't think I've ever like shared that in song though. That's usually like poem or essay
Mm-hmm.
if I'm doing it. I like songs to feel like they have some resolve, or at least there's some deeper like observation there, right? So
And so, what subject matter? Like, so as the listener is listening.
yeah, so like think about it. Like if let's say I got into an argument, right? Well, I take that back because I am writing a song about like what it is like being in the middle of that. But even that still has like a resolve to it. But like maybe it's not I'm writing the argument as it's going down. Maybe it's I'm writing about the perspectives of both people who are in it. And the first verse is me, the second verse is that, or the first verse is the argument itself. Second verse is me, third verse is the partner, right? And being able to like give that to folks for them to evaluate. But I don't really like to do my own evaluations. I don't like to pass judgment. I just like to give people layers, and I mean, you do what you want with it, right? But that's also how I live my life. So there's that. So I do like write a lot in retrospect. And then there's other pieces. There's a lot of my music that's like normally I would say it's aspirational, but I've actually like gotten to a point in my life just through industries that I've been into where it's like a lot of stuff that I'm rapping about, like, yeah, I'm drinking a lot of champagne because I really am drinking a lot of champagne. I am eating foie gras and duck, and I'm probably not I'm probably going to see it and I'm seeing one of the homies and somebody's like sharing that with me, and I'm grateful for that. I think that that's super dope because one of the things in my life is I wanted to expose myself to as many things as possible, even things that people told me that I couldn't attain, so that I could never be in a room and somebody like felt like they had the upper hand, or I couldn't like level the playing field there. So I do write about like those things, but I write about it kind of in a way. It's like, yeah, I got all this, but it's just like, what is it really, And this is honestly this brings me to a point that I think about often. A lot of people, like when I tell them my story or like how I came through, they're like, "Oh, that's remarkable! Like, oh, you're so great! Like, how did you achieve this or whatever?" And I say that it's like I hate the idea of like you're this like magical Negro, right? And it's just like every time you're here, they're like people are like, "Oh my God, you beat the odds," and it's just like, no, don't praise me, change the odds. Like things would be less magical if we had different circumstances, right? So change that. Like I shouldn't be remarkable, right? More people should have exposure. And I just like used exposure, and I had somebody who cared, but everybody doesn't have the same circumstances, right? So when I write these aspirational things, it was really like this is me overcoming like things that I felt were like these gaps or these separations, or like people would say you're cultured or you're not. So when I talk to my friends or I write these things in music, I want people to have this exposure or have heard this thing and then be able to say like, I want you to know enough for you to evaluate if it's good or not for you. Like if somebody else tells you something is good or this is high class, it's just like, do you like it or do you not? Does it make you feel good or does it not? Right. And that's the same thing that we're talking about with music and how it resonates. Like maybe you don't like top 40 things, but does it make this person feel good? Does it make them dance? Great. Maybe that's not what I want. Like, and if this is the Krug champagne of music over here, that's cool. But people still drink Moet and people still drink Andre. And you know why? Because it's a means to being able to have a shareable moment with their friends or like people that they love. Like this is just a medium for like other life experiences. And when we start making all the stuff like too serious, I think we lose.
Well,
I think
the
we lose
bubbles
touch.
will take some of that seriousness away. I
Yeah.
like the bubbles. What is the Richmond rap scene like?
Oh man, it's beautiful. It's extremely collaborative, and I think it's moved. It's grown a lot. I think it's not as divisive as it once was. There's still like different layers of it. There's like folks who might be like in the odd future, like Tyler the Creator kind of style. There's like a lot of like lo-fi, like you look at artists like Obliv, the man, the legend, Devon Flanagan, who's coming out of here. Flanagan's like dropping he's about to go like on a tour. He just came back from like a European tour, and he's just like going all over, like super super dope. And then you got folks like Nicholas F, Radio B, Michael Millions, who are super dope. And you got folks like my man Sap Evans, who's just kind of like extremely experimental, and Creature Alfred, who's also like extremely experimental, and have like these different shows. I'm probably like one of the better people to ask this question because
I'm excited.
I pay attention to a lot of folks, and I think we're at a point where like there's so many different types of folks here now, where it's like there's still like great trap music. I mean, you look at Trap Taz Kai, you look at Rio, you look at King Delt, who's crazy, and those are like straight like trap, like we are from like legit hoods in Richmond, and I think that's dope. And not everybody wants to like get behind that and support that, and I'm just like, all right, like we don't need to be like prejudiced in this way. Like what they doing is dope, and like listen to them. And then you got like your your classic like boom bap hip hop or whatever. I just think that there's so much diversity in the scene right now. What I've seen with Richmond hip hop as it's gone forth over the years is that everybody feels trapped, right? Because they feel like there's no outlet here. And then when we talk like,
and when you say no outlet, do you mean places to perform or longevity in career?
Look, if we get into places, that's a whole different conversation, but definitely yes. And I got some very strong feelings about that.
Share them.
But yeah, definitely places to perform and access and support, because it feels like people don't really like rock with you until you got like some big name, you're on MTV or whatnot. It kind of feels like you're just doing this thing. But always, it's weird to me because I talk a lot about how booming the Richmond rap scene is. And I'm always surprised at like how much people don't know about it, or like how many names that they aren't exposed to. And I'm just like, why is this so held back? But then I think about like, we talk about access to venues and who gets it. And now you got folks who are like, well, we can make more money hosting a rehearsal dinner here, so we're not going to do your event. Or there's just this like, people use terms like, we want to make this like approachable, family friendly, or whatnot, and it's just like.
So do people still have the misconception that rap has to be filthy or profane or like?
Look, I talked to somebody like a month ago about this. I talked to like somebody with money who has a venue, and they like came to me about it, and like just kind of in this way of people talk to me because I'm like approachable in this way. Like I don't seem like I'm going to be like harmful, right? And then folks will say stuff like, oh, you're a reasonable man, you're articulate. And then I'm just like, what does that mean? Like, think about like what that means. Like, I know what you're saying, but then I'm also like, I'm really not the one. Like, I'm really the last person that you want to talk about this kind of stuff with, because I feel strongly about it. I've always like told other artists in the city, we don't need to fight each other. We need to like go to these venues and like show people and like at least eliminate all the things. So they say like, oh, you don't bring a crowd that drinks. So like partner with folks and bring a crowd that drinks. Then they're like, oh, you got people smoking outside. So like help mitigate that as much as possible. Oh, people don't show up on time. So like incentivize people to come earlier. Like there are ways to like solve this if you want to, but people still have this like, there's still this like undertone where it's like, it's dangerous or it's threatening or it's going to cause them to lose business in some way. But then they want to play Wu-Tang in the establishment. And I just can't
oh my God.
I can't like figure it out. And like the way I speak about Wu-Tang, no disrespect. I love Wu-Tang, but like Wu-Tang is like now the like everybody can like respect it and they accept it. It's kind of like people treat it as a caricature of itself. And it's in the same way that like people accept jazz as background music now and not like this like strong, powerful thing that it was. So yeah, there's a lot of things there, but the scene is vibrant. We just need more places to get out. I want more studios to like rock with us and like, you know, like lend a hand. There's this big talk about some other like places, like a lot of studios didn't know how to like market rap or like mix it. So it was just like, I don't want to touch it. Just like, like the same thing that we're talking about, like as artists grow. I think venues, places, or like people that are in the industry to just like take a moment to at least like try on their end, and don't give me something contrived, and don't say like we're doing this like inclusive thing. Just do it, because I don't need you to tell me that it's inclusive. Just include me. Like we don't have to make a thing about it if we just like treat it like this is all the same thing. And that's what I'm saying. The undertone here, like when you really look at it, is like it wouldn't have to be inclusive if you thought about it on the same level as everything else. And because you don't, like for a long time it was hard for me. Like people would be like, I say I do music, and folks would be like, what do you play? And then I would always say that I usually wouldn't tell people that I rapped first. I would actually like tell them like the instruments I played, because I felt kind of like, this is a thing.
Oh yeah.
And then I got to like, I rap, and then I would follow up with the instruments I played. And then I finally just got to like, yeah, rap, and some folks would be like, oh, it's mad weird, but like getting to the point where like you feel comfortable in your own city and you feel like there's access to do what you want to do. I want to see rap on major festivals, right?
And did you grow up here?
Yeah, I'm from the city. I grew up in the city. I grew up in Randolph area, and then I grew up in Carver, like between the two. So really from the city. But yeah, really, really, really from the city of Richmond.
What is going to define success for you?
For me as an artist, or like for this convo?
For you.
Yeah, I just want to be able to like freely make music with my friends and not have to worry about really where the money's going to come from to fund it. Like that's really it. Like if I can just like I work hard at the craft, right? Without anybody telling me that I need to, but everything, it's really hard when you got to like figure out the rest of it, right? Like, all right, we got this great song. How do I get it mixed? All right, I got to pay for the mix. Now I got to get it mastered. All right, pay for the master. And then you got to evaluate, like, is all this money I'm spending on one record worth it? And then I got to do another record and then go on there.
And save gas money so that you can gig and, buy new equipment when you need to. And
it's so much. Like, and then it's like, is it me and my DJ, or is it like me and a band? And then you have to think about that like financially too. Because then it's like, what's the ask for it too? Like, what is my rate, and then how does that get broken down? It's tricky. So for me, it's just like being able to like freely do it, travel, meet new people, and grow as an artist. Like, I mean, music literally was something that I ran away from it for like a long time, and I was like super depressed like my junior year in college, and I just like started writing again, and I felt like, I couldn't, like I'm leaving. I left Richmond. I went to an Ivy League school. Like, it's like, and then I like tell people I'm rapping. It's just like a whole different thing. People would be like, "What are you doing?" Because it doesn't make sense to them. But like, I don't make music because I want accolades from it, or that I need like reassurance. Like I tell people all the time, like I'm modest about a lot of things, but like rapping is not one of them. Like
you were born to do it.
Really, really, and I love it, and I study it, and I like listen to people, and I love like every style of it and meeting folks through it, and then getting to know human beings. Like I meet them through their music, and then I get to know them. Like that's beautiful. So success for me is like being able to do that, and then being able to help like other artists, like to be in a position where I can like at least guide them in some way, but maybe fund them, and not just. And I don't mean just like rappers. I mean rappers, singers, videographers, like whoever. Like even if you're like a young kid doing design, like at the root of it, I really like helping people and like showing off like the city. When you ask me about the scene, I'm really excited about the folks in the scene. Like my man 3-Way Slim just dropped a project, and it's called Golden Child. And I've known Slim since I was like 15, and I like watched him like rap and move up, go to college, and then like still like come out here, like despite all circumstances, just like be committed to it and like inspire me in a way, so seeing my friends just like do it, and they're not doing it because they want this like clout or respect. It's just like, we got to get these stories out.
You can weed those people out. You can suss them out quickly when you. there are so many people who want to either be a rock star, they want to be famous. That's their, I want to be famous.
Mhm.
Okay, well, you clearly don't want to put the work in. You clearly, or they hear stories about, oh, this band was out and they were discovered. Well, they may have been discovered what sounds like the serendipitous moment, but they worked their asses off before they got to whatever that gig was where they ran into a producer and then things went up. Like, you can't sit on your couch and play
Nope.
Guitar Hero and then, oh my gosh, your name is in lights and people want your autograph. That's not how it works.
And the work is different. Like, I've always wanted to play Sydney Opera House. Like, that's a big thing for me. But in terms of like, people are like, and somebody says that they want to be a rock star. Like, I love the idea. Like, I like the idea of like sitting down and writing. It's just like, I want to be here. Like, somebody asked me, I said, I want to play Sydney Opera House. Like, that's like one of my like final things that I want to do.
Is it because of the acoustics, because of the aesthetics, because
Yeah, and I want to like have like a full like basically like symphony orchestra behind me because I love it. But no, like if somebody like feels like they want somebody to make them into a rock star, you're not a rock star. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's something about like, when I step on stage, I'm like a huge introvert. Like I get like.
I was going to ask if you get nervous before you perform. I mean, we saw you. So last week you were at Common House. We had the big celebration for Carter Magazine, and we kicked off Black History Month, and your performance was outstanding. You captivated hundreds of people that were there. It was amazing. Just amazing. And so I was dying to ask you if you get nervous at all.
Yeah, I get nervous about letting people down. Like, I don't want to like have anything like, especially if I'm doing like big shows. I'm really strict. Like, I'll change my entire diet for like 7 days out. Like, if I know I got a big show coming, like I'll make sure that I'm not eating anything with like crazy grease. I don't have butter or anything. I always eat with olive oil. Like, I'll run or walk while I'm like performing the whole set just to see if there's anywhere that like I need to like move around. I don't like, people will be like, do you want like tea with lemon and honey day of? And I'm like, I can't have acid because it's gonna like mess up my vocal cords, but like I'll move there. So I'm like really like kind of nerdy about that piece of it. But yeah, I just get nervous about, like I said, like I'm an introvert. So like when I have conversations with people, I want to make sure that they're like meaningful. So like if I'm doing a performance and it's like for a room full of people, I just want to make sure that they walk away with something and that like they didn't like waste their time. So that's what I get nervous about. And I get nervous about like, if we don't do sound check, like what's going to happen, like with that. But outside of that, not so much more. The things that I used to get nervous about are like things that I like just worked on through practice. I'm more like impatient, right? Like what messes with me is like if I got like a long day and I'm like doing stuff. It's like when I say like I want to be free to like do my own work, like I want to be able to like have a day where I do sound check and just chill and then come and do a show. But like I get like really impatient and like I want to just like perform, and that's like a thing. But not nervous.
Do you have any pre-show rituals?
Pre-show rituals?
Yeah.
I do like trills, so like that little like thing. And then I hum to myself. But outside of that, I always like try to like make sure I do something that like takes my mind off of it. So I'll listen to a song that I really like or something like that. But normally I'm just really trying to find a space that I don't have to talk to anybody. I just kind of like want to be in a corner and chill. And usually if I can do something that like warms me up, like I like to work up like a small sweat before I go on stage because it relaxes me. Like some people, I guess, like to do a drink, but I don't like to drink before I get on stage.
Oh, it's probably the endorphins. You get all the good things that are flowing. I just heard a podcast with David Byrne who said that they asked him if he still gets nervous before he performs. And he said, it's not necessarily nervous. He said, he doesn't like idle time. So one of his rituals is making a cup of tea. And then that way he's focusing on boiling the water and steeping the tea bag. And then it's not necessarily that he's nervous and he doesn't want to think about what he's about to do. He would just rather preoccupy his mind. Yeah. So that he can stay in the creative flow when he gets out there. He hasn't gotten himself all spun up before.
And then if you do that, like the one way to like if I haven't performed a song in a long time, like if I am like freaking out before the show and I just want to get up there, like anxiety, that's the one way to like mess up. Like if you let anxiety like get in your head and you think too much about it, like performances should just be like, this kind of oozes out of you at this point. Like you're not thinking about it, you're just kind of like in the room and we're like making this moment. But if you have to think too much about it, it just like,
Get out of your head.
yeah. So I don't want that time to just like do that.
What does 2022 look like for you? How many shows do you have booked? What do you have you recorded albums?
I have. I've actually like recorded 3 that are out to the public, and then I
Okay.
hadn't for a while. I was just like releasing singles.
Mhm.
I lost a hard drive of an album, like all of like the stems, so we couldn't get it mixed and like put up. So that sucked. But I'm looking at dropping 3 projects this year. One might end up dropping at the beginning of next year. The first one we're looking at dropping in June. It's called That Will Be Done. I'm like so excited about it. It's me and my man Don Kevo from the 757. We've been working together for a while.
Full album?
It's probably gonna be like 7 tracks. I don't really know what people call albums and EPs.
Yeah.
The same thing these days. As long I think it just has to be over like 30 minutes or something like that. But yeah, 2022. I'm just kind of like rebooking, but like booking consciously. I'm like helping open a business right now, so that's a thing too. So I want to like have a little bit of focus there. But part of that is to be able to have a venue where people can perform, like where it's not like this weird discrimination. But 2022 for me is really getting music back out, getting projects in front of people, and then working from there. Just being in a lot of rooms with folks, and then the shows and all those things will come. We can book those, but I want to get the music to people first. And yeah, that's it.
So when you're not working, what do you do for fun? How do you blow off steam? How do you fill your creative well? Are you goofy? Do you have guilty
Yeah,
pleasures?
I'm goofy as hell. I'm like a prankster, so I like messing around.
Oh,
with
what's the
folks.
best prank you've ever pulled?
I don't know. Like I just like catching people off guard or whatever. I don't know. Like I trip people. I like act like I'm gonna drop a tray of glasses, little stuff like that.
What about guilty pleasures? There's something you watch that you're like, I gotta be alone. I want anybody to know.
Oh man. Yo, I got on these like weird. I got on these like weird like YouTube dives. And I was just like watching like a ton of like QAnon things. It's like weird like conspiracy theory things. And part of it is just like it's funny because like you can see where like somebody like could make this make sense, right? Like it's not like illogical. It's just like improbable, So it's like super funny, and I just like get enthralled by that. I've been watching a lot of Netflix. I finally like watched The Witcher after that, and watching a lot of Power. And then I don't know. I watch a lot of Tiny Desk just to like
those are great.
find new things.
Those are fantastic. I just watched the Dua Lipa recently. Hers was so good.
I gotta watch that. I didn't even know it was out.
Fantastic. It's lovely.
And then I read a lot about like this is gonna sound bad, but like I read a lot about like old gangsters and like old like drug kingpins, because I always think that it's interesting like how they think and like what I mean. Some people like you'll look at some folks and like the FBI or like DEA person who's chasing them. They'll be like, I got a lot of respect for this person, just like out of the.
It always blows my mind that you have to take the legend and the myth out of everything. They were a person and they were able to influence so many people. And I think, could I be duped into doing bad things because someone is quote unquote so charismatic? Like it blows my mind, whether it's a gangster or like somebody in the mob or politicians, or
I'm glad you said politicians.
Anybody who just, you hear stories of, oh, they were just so charismatic. And I think, could I really be fooled by someone like that? I guess I could. I don't know.
I think part of what's interesting about a lot of this is that like when you're reading about some folks, like some folks believe so much in like the vision that they had. It's not that they were trying to like manipulate people. They were really just trying to be like, this is the vision. You're either with it or you're not.
They were They really had conviction for what they saw. You're right. You're
so
right.
so
and
I
they
see
just
that.
really wanted people to see their point and jump on board. You're right.
And not to say that like folks, like I'm not like excusing like bad things, right? But like we're all kind of like I look like when I think about politics. So like when I went to college, I ended up going for hospitality, but I was like big in the government. And had I gone to Brown, I probably would have been government and gone into diplomacy. So I look at a lot of like comparative politics and like government studies or whatnot, and just kind of like the philosophies behind them. And it's always just like, one, it's always just like a group of 20 people making a decision that like affects a whole country, then the country gets a bad rap for it. But the other thing is just like, look, we have all had to make some kind of decision where it's like, I don't know if it was right or if it was wrong, right? And it's just like, where does like your morality come from? Kant talks a lot about this. Immanuel Kant talks a lot about this in his philosophy, and like the idea of like Kantian ethics and duty. And if you're like CIA, right, and you have national security like in your mind, and you lie to your wife every day because you can't tell her where you are because of the security, like what is the hierarchy of morality there? Right? Because it's like, how many people do you affect? And life isn't so gray. Like, I don't deify people around me, right? Because I can't. Like, I can't expect people to be like morally pure, right? Because there's no, people have different perspectives. So I could never expect the president to only go with one thing, because you're the president of all people, right? So like, when you start making decisions, is more about like, what is the overall, like, how many people does it affect, and what does this mean?
The
right?
lesser of the evils.
Yeah.
The path of least suckiness, I think a lot of people say.
Exactly. Like, I was talking to my homeboy last night, and we're just talking about like the streets, and like people are always just like, well, you shouldn't have made that decision. Like, you shouldn't have, like, you should have told on this person. And I'm just like, yeah, but that saves them and their family, right? You know, so it's like, okay, maybe something happened over here, but I'm not worried about them. Like, I'm not gonna get my mom, my sister, or somebody shot because it's just like, what people, it's so easy to like sit back and say this is right and this is wrong and you shouldn't do that. But like, no, not many people are really living their lives like that.
Nuance. This is what I've learned. We have lost nuance between cancel culture and vilifying and all these things. How about a little nuance?
Because it's easier to get rid of nuance because it dehumanizes people, right? And if you can dehumanize somebody and vilify them, right? Like, make them like this mythical creature that's like 11 feet tall, then you don't feel like you're actually like doing something to a person.
We just had this conversation at dinner a few nights ago that we were talking about neighbors and how neighbors shoot neighbors, in their driveway. They hear something, they think it's, they shoot. If we knew our neighbors better, we would assume the best. Think about people you work with on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
If they have a task and that task isn't performed, you don't automatically think they didn't do their job, they're slacking, they're whatever. You think, oh my goodness, they must have made a mistake, or oh, they must have gotten busy. You assume the best because you know them. When we don't know each other well, it's human nature, we're not assuming the best. So you live in a community of people that you don't know well. So when you see dog poo on your yard or your trash is kicked over, instead of just thinking, oh, this thing happened, maybe someone had good intention, maybe it was just negligence, whatever it was, we automatically assume the best. And that's why internet trolling is so terrible, because you just said it. Talk about removal. Talk about you don't even have to see the person. You can hurt their feelings and be completely removed from it.
I'm going to bring it closer to home. It's just like the conversation that we had about the venues, right? And then it's like, we'll be so focused on making sure that like nothing happens. Because if one thing happens, then folks just like say, oh, we knew this was going to happen, and we take it away instead of like assuming the best, or just assuming that was like one thing that's out of it. It's just like, there's so much of this onus on us to be perfect, for like,
to prove something.
I can't control like you know what I'm saying? And it's just like, anybody can make a bad decision anywhere,
or just an accident. But because they have this predispositioned attitude about it, not nice. Well, where can people go online for more information? How can we follow you?
Follow me. All of my most of my real interaction is on my Instagram. It's Mr. Chance Fischer, but I'm Mr. Chance Fischer on everything. That's Fischer, like Bobby Fischer, so Fischer. My Twitter is just really kind of a place I share music there, but it's more just me being like ignorant, funny, and stupid. So that's just like a little bit more my outlet. But if you want to like follow like what's going on and see like all of the creative art and stuff, follow my Instagram. But if you want to get to know more about my personality, then follow me on Twitter, because I'm hilarious.
If you do say so yourself.
Yeah.
Well, we are bringing you back. We're actually going to be talking about a project in April. We've got a partnership with something going on with the Poe Museum, so we'll have details about that coming soon, but you're going to be a part of that. We are so excited. So now you've come into our fold as well.
Yes.
And I am so glad you have taken the time to come down and chat with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to us for the podcast on all the usual suspects. And of course, be sure to tune in every Tuesday night at 7:30 p.m. YouTube, Facebook, Twitch for Shaco Sessions Live. That's a wrap.